We haven't done a video on otoplasty for a while, and I thought I was going to update it. I just finished a consultation with a nice young lady and it brought some things to mind. She actually brought in a lot of photos of different otoplasty results that were very illustrative of concepts that I wanted to deliver in a more concrete and concise fashion. So let's talk about what makes an ear look normal. And we're not going to talk about lop ears or cup ear deformities. That's all been talked about in my virtual consultation on ears. I'm going to specifically talk more about prioritizing how we see an ear. This all comes from the concept of cancer reconstruction for ears. I've done a lot of cancer reconstruction for ears. I had a colleague of mine say, you know, after she had done a reduction of an ear, why did it look worse? And she told me it stuck out more. And I said, well, it's due to the technique she used on the cancer reconstruction that led to that problem. And actually, that's the number one thing I want to bring attention to you is prioritizing what are the problems with an ear that makes it look abnormal. So there are really about three things that are problematic. One is protrusion. How much does the ear actually stick out? The second thing is ear shape, normal anatomy and various proportions of that ear. And the third thing is size. And what's interesting is that the least important thing is size, and the most important thing is protrusion. So let's talk about why and how do we address those issues. Protrusion means from a frontal view, how much does the ear stick out? And that is very important. And that's the only thing when we're talking about relative sizes between ears that creates a problem, because that's the only time you see both ears in play at one time. When you're a 3/4 or side view, you don't see both ears. The only time you see both ears is a frontal view. So the amount of sticking outness or protrusion of the ears is the most important thing I work on for you to make sure the area looks as good as I humanly can. That's the first thing. The second thing that's important is shape. What does shape mean? Absence of an antihelical fold, lobules too long or tucked up, a helix that's a little bit off play. Now, why is that important? Because from a 3/4 side view, you can't tell the size relative to the other one. You can only tell the shape. So the shape is the second most important thing that I'm trying to deliver on, but not at the expense of protrusion. And I'm going to talk about a specific incidence of this that was very interesting that I think will become clearer for you. And the last thing is size. So what does size mean? It doesn't have too much to do with otoplasty, cosmetic otoplasty reconstructions. It has more to do with cancer reconstructions in the sense that when I'm looking at an ear, the first thing I'm going to compromise is the size of the ear. In other words, for example, let's say I cut out part of this ear that's cancerous. I'm going to do a sliding technique to move the lobule, the bottom part, up this way to rebuild the hole so that the shape looks normal and that the protrusion stays within tolerance and doesn't come forward, but the size has already been compromised. We tend not to notice different sizes in ears naturally, and yourself, yes, but when you look at someone else, you don't notice them. Even from a frontal view, you notice more protrusion. And that's the last thing that's important. There was an incident when I had to compromise protrusion for shape. As I told you, priority 1 is protrusion, priority 2 is shape, priority 3 is size. So when I'm looking at priorities, I always need to not too much of one or the other. So if we say protrusion is the most important thing, is it to be sacrificed at all expense? The answer is no. Here's an example. I had a gentleman with an ear with a very, very large ear on the side. And so I tucked it back to the point where I thought it matched the same protrusion of the other ear. The problem is his antihelical fold was so bent that it looked like this huge bow. So the shape of the ear was significantly compromised for the protrusion to the point where I thought that even if he was being seen from a 3/4 side view, it would have been too unnatural. So I let the ear hang a little bit further out in terms of symmetry. So symmetry is important, but not to the point of excluding other problems such as shape. So that's just a summary of the things that I see when I look at ears. And I thought just to touch upon one final point is the lady I did an otoplasty consultation for was talking about her breast augmentation, and the doctor said, expect them to be fraternal twins, not identical twins. And I thought that was an interesting way to look at even ears, because we can't get symmetry on anything we do. But at the same time, if you're staring at it and looking for one versus the other, you're not going to see an absolute symmetry. But I thought those principles and priorities are good ways for you to think about things before you come to see me in consultation.